They wrote it as a prayer, but it read like a curse. The Sisters of Saint Helena believed they were recording the voice of heaven. What they left instead was a hymn no choir dared to sing, because those who tried never finished the song. The camera lingers on stone, a wall weathered by centuries, its surface pitted by rain, etched with thin veins of moss. Beyond it rises the silhouette of St. Helena Abbey, its towers jagged against the horizon, like teeth breaking from the mouth of the earth. The fields around it are hushed, even in summer, as though the land itself had been instructed to keep silent. For years, travelers who passed along the valley road spoke of its silence, not the quiet of abandonment, not the natural hush of distance, but a silence that felt cultivated, enforced, as if whatever happened within those walls demanded that nothing should be carried outward. And yet, it had not always been so. In the beginning, St. Helena had been known for its sound. The abbey was founded in the late 18th century by a small congregation of Benedictine sisters fleeing unrest further south. They came here, to this isolated ridge, bringing little more than manuscripts, vestments, and their voices became the life of the abbey. Accounts from the period describe choirs that could be heard across the valley. Farmers paused their plows to listen. Children in nearby villages grew up with the chants of St. Helena drifting into their sleep. One local diary recalls, "It was as if angels sang at dusk, as if every stone of the abbey was hollowed into a bell, and when they sang, the entire hillside rang with prayer." It was their voices that gave the abbey its identity, and yet today, there is nothing. Not one note, not one echo. The choir stalls remain, the hymnals remain, the manuscripts are still kept in careful boxes, lined with dust and linen. But for decades, no song has left those walls. The silence is total, but something wasn't right. When pressed, the villagers do not call it a simple decline. They do not speak of dwindling numbers, or a lack of training, or even the natural erosion of tradition. Instead, they lower their voices and say one phrase again and again. They lost their song. The words sound strange, even childish, but behind them lies a story that none will fully tell aloud, only fragments. Some say it was a punishment, some say it was a bargain, others insist it was a single hymn, the last hymn written at St. Helena. One woman, interviewed in the 1970s, recalls walking past the abbey on the evening it was sung. She described how the air quivered, as though the clouds themselves were listening. She said the melody was unlike anything she had heard before, too low then too high, bending back on itself, as though the music did not want to resolve. Her words end abruptly in the transcript. She refused to say more. Others, older, quieter, recall only what came after. The doors of the abbey shut, the bells ceased ringing, and when the sisters were seen again, their mouths did not open in song. From that night onward, the abbey remained mute, and still it stands, a vast stone throat that will not sing. There are those who dismiss it as local superstition. They point to dwindling numbers, to the decline of monastic life in the 20th century, to the simple fact that fewer and fewer women entered the order. That may explain the silence of practice, but it does not explain the silence of memory. When asked, no surviving sister recalls any detail of the hymn, no line, no title, no notation. And yet, in the locked archives of the diocese, there exists one brief notation in a bishop's hand. It reads, "Do not allow it to be sung again." No explanation, no elaboration, only the warning. The fields remain hushed, the walls stand, and the abbey waits in its silence. The camera lingers on a single candle, its flame trembles against the shadowed walls of the abbey, Light stretches across the cold stone floor. Dust motes drift in the beam. Silence fills the corners, yet it is a silence that listens. Sister Agnes arrives in the cloister with quiet steps. Her habit brushes the tiles, leaving no mark. She is tall, precise, and deliberate. The sisters watch her with a mixture of respect and fear. There is authority in the way she moves. There is reverence in the tilt of her head. She has been here 10 years, rising through the ranks with a discipline that borders on obsession. The nuns whisper that she has memorized every psalm in the abbey's library, every chant, every sacred tone, and still she seeks more. But something wasn't right. She spends hours alone in the music room. The windows are drawn, the benches empty. A single sheet of parchment rests on the desk before her. She does not speak, she does not hum. Yet by the end of the night, notes appear, dense, intricate, and unfamiliar. The sisters call her the choir mistress, not because she conducts them often, not because she instructs in the usual sense, but because when she moves her hands over the choir, they obey as if touched by the wind itself. Visitors describe her as strict but fair. When she speaks, her voice carries calm authority. It does not rise to anger. It does not plead for compliance. It simply is, and the choir responds. One observer from the diocese later wrote, "There is a precision in her movements. She does not guide. She imposes." The sisters' voices follow, not by instruction, but by will. She begins composing the hymn. Late one autumn, she claims it came to her in dreams, and she is insistent. It is not meant for man's ears, not for the congregation, not even for the abbey, only for God. The sisters are wary. They have seen how music has the power to lift them, and they have seen how it can wound. One evening, Sister Agnes calls them to the choir room. She presents the sheet music. The notation is unfamiliar, strange. The notes do not resolve naturally. They bend backward upon themselves. They stretch beyond conventional rhythm. It is a song that resists completion. A young nun speaks up. It is unsettling. She says. Sister Agnes does not answer. She only gestures for them to begin, and that is when he heard it. The first attempt at the hymn produces trembling. The youngest members of the choir clutch their hymnals. The melody rises, falls, twists. It is beautiful, but it cuts deep. By the end, one nun is pale, unable to stand. Another trembles violently, clutching the wooden bench. But Agnes writes on. She returns each morning, with fresh notes, insisting on rehearsal. She claims that the song will guide them closer to the divine. Some sisters begin to avoid the practice sessions. They whisper in the dormitory about strange headaches, sudden nausea, and a sense of being watched. Others, more devout, follow willingly. They say the music feels like a presence, not a threat, but all are changed. In the evenings, the convent seems smaller. Shadows fall differently. Hallways stretch longer than memory allows. The candlelight flickers, and sometimes pauses, though the flame is untouched. And still, the hymn grows. It spreads through the abbey slowly. Like fog, notes appear in notebooks without explanation. Manuscripts move. Pages once blank are now filled with the choir mistress's notation. The abbess confronts her. "What are you doing?" she asks. Sister Agnes kneels before the desk. Her hands hover over the parchment. Her eyes are wide, bright, fixed on the unseen. "It is not mine," she says softly. "It comes to me, and it must be sung." The abbess turns away. She cannot argue further. There is an authority here, older than her office. By winter the sisters report strange dreams. Dreams of voices that echo in the empty abbey. They describe melodies that they cannot remember upon waking, yet the emotion lingers. Fear, awe, and longing, all at once. One nun confesses, "I dreamed that the music was a stairway, and I climbed, higher than I ever thought possible, and then, I could not descend." The choir mistress listens without comment. She records her notes with care, unaware of how quickly the abbey bends to her will. The abbey itself seems to respond. The air grows colder during practice. The stones hum faintly underfoot. The wind through the courtyards carries something strange, something too deliberate to be accidental. But Sister Agnes continues. She is meticulous. Her hair is always perfectly covered, her hands steady, her expression calm, yet the music she composes grows sharper, more complex, and increasingly dissonant. It is no longer sufficient for her to guide the sisters by presence alone. She must bend the sound itself, and the sisters obey. By the end of that season, those who attempted the hymn report dizziness, others collapse mid-note, some refuse to enter the choir room at all, claiming a weight in the air, a pressure that makes them shiver uncontrollably. One night, the youngest sister stays behind, hiding in a corner to witness what happens when Agnes leaves. She writes later, "The music did not stop. It continued, even when she was gone. It drifted, low and trembling, across the benches. I could not see anyone. I could not stop watching. I felt that I was being called, and I did not answer." The choir mistress leaves the music room as always. The candle flickers in her absence. Silence returns for a moment. Then, a single note lingers. It vibrates, slow, imperfect, and it is enough. The young nun flees. She does not speak of what she saw, not to the abbess, not to her sisters. The melody continues to grow, night after night, feeding itself on those who remain. By spring, the abbey is quieter than it has ever been. Only Agnes is constant. Only her music endures. The other sisters move with caution. Whispers follow them in corridors. Windows rattle, as if the abbey itself listens. Doors creak open on their own. Manuscripts vanish, only to reappear days later. But the choir mistress is unperturbed. She claims that God is patient. Beelzebub choir mistress is unperturbed. She claims that God is patient, that the hymn is necessary, that it is a pathway to understanding. And the sisters, exhausted, fearful, and obedient, follow, until one evening, the music breaks. It falters mid-note. A single high tone slices through the stone halls. A scream follows, not human, not entirely. The sisters stop. Their voices tremble, eyes widen, faces pale. And Sister Agnes, she smiles, because she knows it is only the beginning. The light in the music room is thin. It falls through tall, narrow windows, scattering over the worn wooden benches. Dust floats in the shafts of sun. The air smells of old paper and polished stone. Silence fills the spaces between, but not all is empty. Something lingers in the room, just beyond the edge of perception. The sisters gather each morning, folding their hands, opening hymnals, trying to keep routine. But something wasn't right. They notice it first in the cadence. The hymn that Sister Agnes composes does not resolve. It bends back upon itself. Notes hang suspended, unfinished. The chord sequences twist and swerve as though refusing to answer. One line rises, then falls, only to rise again, unexpectedly. There is beauty in it, undeniable, but it carries a weight that is difficult to name. Several of the older sisters pause mid-note during rehearsal. They exchange glances. They do not speak. Yet in private, the melody returns to them. One sister later writes in her journal, "I tried to sleep, but the music would not leave. I hummed it under my breath, though I knew I should not. It was as if the hymn was inside me now, and I had no choice." The room grows colder during practice. Shadows cling to corners where the candlelight does not reach. The younger sisters whisper about headaches and ringing in their ears. They speak of dizzy spells during the performance. Some confess to hearing the hymn at odd moments while carrying water, walking through the corridors, kneeling in prayer, and they hum it quietly. They hum it when no one else is near. It is a small act of defiance, or perhaps compulsion, but the melody twists even in their humming. Notes that should resolve linger, chords that should reconcile hang. The hymn seems aware of them, aware of the attention it receives. It asks questions the sisters cannot answer. They begin to avoid eye contact during rehearsal. Their movements become hesitant. They glance at one another, searching for understanding. And sometimes one will whisper, "It feels alive." Sister Agnes notices nothing. She writes steadily at her desk. She listens intently. Occasionally she lifts her hand and gestures. The music flows outward, precise and exact, yet impossible to fully control. By midweek, the effect of the hymn has begun to fragment the choir. Some avoid the rehearsal entirely. They offer excuses of illness or fatigue. Others come dutifully, but their eyes are wide, scanning corners, alert to something they cannot name. A nun in her early 20s speaks privately to the abbess. "I hear it in my dreams. It asks me to finish it, but I do not know how. I do not know what will happen if I try." The abbess says nothing. She has seen the hymn take hold of the sisters before. She has felt it herself, but she is powerless to intervene, because the music is already beyond human command. And that is when he heard it. The first time the new priest assigned to the abbey heard the hymn, he stopped mid-step in the choir hall, his hands clenched at his sides. There was something in the unresolved intervals that struck him. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, a tremor in the rhythm, a question that remained unanswered. He left the hall quickly, his face pale. He would later describe the experience as a weight pressing down on the inside of my skull. Others report similar reactions. Some cannot attend rehearsals without feeling nausea. Some leave with a sense of dread that lingers for hours. The hymn grows. It embeds itself in the abbey. It moves through walls and corridors. It curls in the stone corners of the building. Sisters awake in the night, humming without intent. Manuscripts are found open, notes changed overnight. A line that ended yesterday differently today. A chord that shifts without explanation. It is meticulous, precise, disturbing. The choir becomes fractured. Small groups of sisters whisper together about the hymn's strangeness. Some call it cursed, some call it divine. No one can agree. And the more it is whispered about, the more it insists itself. One night, a group of novices sit in the candlelight. They attempt to transcribe the hymn by memory. They fail. Notes bend, intervals break, rhythms do not match. They begin to hum in secret, again and again, unable to resist. And still, the melody will not resolve. By mid-season, the abbey feels different. The air is heavier. The stone walls seem to lean inward. Footsteps echo differently in the hallways. Shadows drift across corridors where no one is present. Even Sister Agnes seems changed. Her composure is intact, her movements precise, but there is a tension in her shoulders, a restlessness in her eyes. The sisters speak cautiously of these changes. They avoid open confrontation. Some describe feeling drawn to the hymn, compelled to sing it, even when it terrifies them. Others describe a hollow sensation, as if the music is removing something from within. The candlelight flickers constantly now. Drafts arise where no windows are open. Manuscripts are found moved. Pages appear rewritten. Notes, once precise, stretch unnaturally across the page, and the humming continues. Even the sisters who refuse to attend rehearsal find themselves humming the hymn in their rooms, in the chapel, while kneeling in prayer. They cannot stop. By the end of the season, the abbey is quieter than it has ever been, except for the occasional low hum drifting through corridors. It is faint, barely perceptible, and yet it is enough to unsettle everyone who hears it. Some of the older nuns begin to avoid the music room entirely. They walk past it quickly, heads lowered, pretending not to see the manuscripts on the benches. And yet at night, they hear the notes in their dreams, and when they wake, they find themselves humming without thought. By the following week, even the abbess notices the change. She listens from her quarters as the melody drifts down the hall. She feels it pressing at her chest, like a presence she cannot name. She knows that the hymn is no longer simply music. It has become something else, something that exists between the walls, something that watches, something that asks questions no one can answer. By winter the choir is fractured. The young and brave continue under Agnes's instruction. The rest stay away, and the hymn remains. It grows stronger. It seeps through the stone, the wood, the cold draughts of the abbey. Even the walls seem to vibrate with it. No one dares to speak of what it will become, but all know it is changing them. One sister is found sitting alone in the vestry, humming under her breath. Tears streak her cheeks. Her hands clutch a hymn book that is open, but the notes on the page are moving, shifting, reshaping themselves, and she cannot stop humming. The others avoid her. They know the music is reaching too far, and that is when he heard it. The priest assigned to monitor the abbey hears it again, late one night, faint at first, a quivering tone, stretching impossibly long. He follows it down the corridor. It leads him past the choir stalls, past empty benches, and into the music room. No one is there, and yet the note hangs. It bends back upon itself. It twists. It does not resolve. And in the silence that follows, the priest feels the weight of something enormous, something patient. He does not stay to listen further. The abbey is full of it, the hymn that cannot be finished, the melody that refuses closure, and the sisters, in secret, hum it still, because once it is inside you, there is no leaving. The walls echo with it, the air vibrates with it, the candlelight flickers, and the hymn waits. The morning light drifts through the high windows of the choir room. It falls in long pale streaks across the wooden benches. Dust dances in the sunbeams, suspended like frozen motes of air. The stone walls are cold, silent, watching. Outside, the wind presses against the abbey, carrying whispers that no one can quite place. The sisters gather, reluctant but obedient. They move in formation, quiet footsteps on the worn floor. Each carries a hymnal, each bows their head. But something wasn't right. Sister Agnes stands at the front, her fingers poised over the piano keys. Her eyes are steady, unwavering, fixed on the parchment before her. The hymn she composed stretches across the page, complex, unfinished, uneasy. The first notes enter the room. The sisters' voices join, a murmur at first, soft and careful, then growing. The chords rise and fall with precision. They are beautiful, harmonious, perfectly imperfect, and yet tension threads through the air. By the second verse, some sisters hesitate, their mouths open, then close again. They glance at one another. Something about the intervals makes their throats tighten. They cannot explain why. The melody twists, turning against itself. One note lingers where it should resolve. Another falls too soon, leaving a space that feels too vast. A young nun stumbles over the words. She grips the hymnal with white-knuckled fingers. Her breath catches, and that's when he heard it. A gasp, sharp, sudden. One of the sisters collapses mid-note. She falls to the floor, hands clawing at the tiles, as though the air itself were pressing against her chest. She chokes, thrashes, trying to breathe. Panic spreads through the choir. Another sister staggers. She clutches her face. Blood seeps from her nose, small but startling against the pale habit. She is silent, but the terror in her eyes speaks louder than words. The abbess moves forward. Her voice rings through the hall. Stop, stop immediately. The room freezes. The hymn hangs unfinished in the air. The notes seem heavier than before, lingering like a question without answer. The sisters scatter to aid the fallen. They carry her to a bench. They dab at the blood with cloth. Some whisper prayers under their breath. Others sit in stunned silence. Sister Agnes does not move. She watches. Her hands remain poised over the keys. Her expression does not change. The abbess approaches her. This hymn, it is forbidden, she says softly, though the weight of authority hangs heavy in the room. Agnes tilts her head. It is necessary. It is dangerous, the abbess replies. Her words are final. No one will sing it again. The choir room falls silent. Only the fallen sisters' shallow breaths fill the space.
The melody that had consumed the walls vanishes into the stillness, and yet it leaves its mark. The sisters cannot stop replaying it in their minds. The intervals curl through memory, impossible to forget. The unresolved cadences haunt their waking hours.
Outside, the wind carries the faintest echo of the hymn, just a whisper, just enough to make the hairs on the back of the neck rise. By evening, the abbey is heavy with unspoken fear. Some sisters retreat to their cells, refusing to speak. Others pace quietly in the cloisters, murmuring prayers to dispel the weight in the air. One novice sits in the candlelight, hands trembling over a hymnal. She traces the notes that she can remember. Her eyes widen. She shivers. It asks for something. She whispers, "Something I cannot give." The abbess watches from the doorway. Her face is pale. She has seen enough. She knows that the hymn is no longer simply music. It has become a presence, subtle but insistent, and the choir mistress, calm and unwavering, begins to write again. The sisters avoid her eyes. They pretend not to notice her movements, but the hymn grows, even without rehearsal. It infiltrates the stone walls, the shadows, the quiet spaces between prayer and sleep. Some say they hear it at night, a note rising, unresolved, drifting through the empty corridors. They wake with it in their heads, humming unconsciously, their hearts beating faster than reason allows. A single candle flickers and dies. Shadows stretch unnaturally across the floor. The abbey feels smaller, constricted, as if the walls themselves are listening. And that night, one of the older sisters whispers to the abbess, "It is inside us now, even if we do not sing. It sings within." The abbess says nothing. She cannot, because she knows the truth. The hymn has taken root, and the first rehearsal was only the beginning. Even in silence, it will not leave, and the abbey waits. The corridor stretches before the sisters like a tunnel of stone. Moonlight slants through narrow windows, cutting pale rectangles across the flagstones. The air is cold, damp, carrying the faint scent of ink and dust. Every footstep echoes, yet the halls feel full of sound that does not belong. At first, they think it is the wind, but something wasn't right. Till late one evening, a novice pauses near the chapel doorway. She hears it, soft, impossibly faint, a melody threading through the stone corridors, a hymn. No one is singing. She stops, heart hammering, and the music drifts past her ears. It rises, then falls, a question without resolution. She glances down the corridor, empty, no candles, no shadows moving, only the walls, still and silent. She turns and hurries to the dormitory. Others are already whispering, "It's happening again." One says, "Who is singing?" Another asks, voice tight. No one answers. The sisters find their hymnals moved. Pages open where they had been closed. Notes shift subtly under the candlelight, ink curling where it had been straight. Some lines are rewritten entirely. Others appear to have been erased and filled again in a perfect, deliberate hand, and no one admits to touching them. By midnight, fear has taken hold. The novices huddle together in the common room, murmuring prayers. The older sisters pace, hands clasped, eyes darting down long corridors. It is not only the manuscripts that change. The air itself vibrates with the melody, the low, insistent hum threading through the walls. They feel it in their chests, in their throats, in the backs of their knees. And that's when he heard it. The priest assigned to oversee the abbey at night records the sound drifting along the halls. He writes in his journal that it was neither wind nor echo. It was deliberate, precise, insistent. He follows it down the corridors, but it moves with him, always ahead, always slipping through corners. He reaches the choir room, empty, only the candle burns, flickering weakly, and yet the hymn continues. The sisters begin to notice small changes in their own behavior. They hum it under their breath. Unconsciously, a novice wakes in the night, the music already playing in her mind. She tries to stop it. She cannot. The melody coils through the abbey, like a living thing. It slips under doors, through cracks in the stone, brushing against sleeping faces. Some dream of it, some dream of nothing else. One sister reports waking to find her manuscript open on the floor, ink glistening as though wet. The lines of music have shifted. The words of the hymn seem to pulse in time with her heartbeat. She swears she did not move it. No one believes her, yet the next night, the pattern repeats. Hymnals are discovered open. Notes shift in ways that cannot be explained. The melody drifts through the corridors. It bends, loops, breaks, and resolves imperfectly. Some of the sisters grow pale. They refuse to enter the music room. Some whisper prayers in their cells, hands trembling over rosaries. Others try to copy the notes by memory, but the lines twist before their eyes, resisting replication. The abbess attempts to maintain order. She moves among the sisters, inspecting the hymnals, checking doors, adjusting candles, but the air itself is altered. The stone seems to hum with the music. The shadows bend toward the corridors. One night, a young novice hides behind a lectern, trying to catch sight of the source. She watches, silent, trembling. She sees nothing, and yet the music touches her anyway. She writes later, "It knows where I am." He follows, even unseen. It is present. I cannot stop hearing it. I cannot stop humming. The choir is fractured. Some refuse practice entirely. Some linger under Sister Agnes' watchful eye, drawn by a combination of devotion and fear. The hymn infiltrates everything: walls, floors, manuscripts, dreams, memory. The candlelight flickers. Shadows stretch unnaturally. The stone itself seems to lean closer, attentive. The sisters avoid the music room. They pass it quickly in the halls, heads bowed, pretending not to see the manuscripts on benches. They whisper warnings in their cells, and yet, in the deep silence of night, the hymn drifts again. It coils through the stone, through the air, through the minds of those who dwell in the abbey. By spring, the melody has become a quiet obsession. The sisters hum it without realizing. Notes shift under candlelight. Manuscripts appear rewritten each morning. One older nun admits to the abbess, "It speaks to me in my sleep. I cannot resist. I fear what it wants." The abbess says nothing. She cannot, because she knows that the hymn is no longer just music. It has become part of the abbey, part of the sisters, part of the shadows themselves. The walls seem to breathe with it. The corridors curve differently. The candlelight wavers as if acknowledging it. And in the quietest hours the sisters can hear a single note linger, unresolved, bending backward on itself, refusing closure. And the novices hum it. They hum it when no one is near, even when they pray, even when they hide, even when they attempt to forget. It remains. By the end of the season, the abbey feels smaller. The stone seems to press in. The air tastes heavier. Steps echo differently, and in the corner of the choir room, the manuscripts lie open, ink glistening faintly, and the hymn waits. The morning sun filters through tall narrow windows of the abbey, dust motes suspended in golden shafts. The stone walls are cool, silent. The corridors echo the faintest footfalls, though few move at this hour. Outside, the wind rustles over the distant fields, carrying scents of wet earth and old leaves. Today, the abbey receives a visitor. A bishop arrives. His robes whisper across the stone floors. He carries no fanfare, only a quiet authority, the kind that bends attention without effort. The sisters bow, heads lowered, habits stiffened. Even the youngest novices sense the weight of his presence. He is here because of the hymn. They lead him through the corridors to the choir room. Every step is measured. Every breath seems drawn with care. The manuscripts lie open, ink still glistening in the soft morning light. But something wasn't right.
The bishop pauses at the doorway. His gaze sweeps over the benches, the polished wood, the dust motes catching the light. He sees the notes, the open hymnals. He feels it before he hears it. Sister Agnes begins to play. The notes rise carefully from the piano, curling through the stone hall. The sisters join, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. The melody stretches, twists and folds back upon itself. The intervals refuse resolution. The cadences remain unfinished. And that's when he heard it. The bishop's face pales, his hands curl at his sides, his lips press together. He does not speak, he does not move, he only listens, utterly still. The hymn fills the room. It wraps around the walls, it coils between the stone columns. Every note seems deliberate, intentional, but beyond comprehension. One of the older sisters glances at him. His eyes are wide, his knuckles white, his breathing shallow. When the final note fades, silence falls like a weight. The echo lingers, the candles flicker, though no drafts stir. He does not speak immediately. He merely surveys the manuscripts, the choir, the faces of the sisters. Finally he steps forward. All copies, he says quietly. Every sheet must be destroyed. Burn them, leave nothing. The order is absolute. The sisters obey. They carry the manuscripts to the fireplace. Flames rise, ink curls into smoke, pages curl into ash. The hymn disappears in fire and shadow, and for a moment, relief fills the room. But night comes. The sisters awaken to the faintest draft of wind through the chapel. They stir in their cells. One notices a note of light on the altar. Fresh manuscripts lie there, neatly stacked, ink dark and precise. Each note mirrors the hymn that was destroyed hours before. They do not understand. They do not speak. Sister Agnes approaches the altar slowly, her hands hovering over the parchment. She lifts a single sheet, tracing a finger along the lines of music. "It is here," she whispers. The others gather, fear and awe mingling in their expressions. Every sheet is perfect, every cadence intact, every interval unchanged. They check the fireplace. Only ash remains. Nothing survived the fire, and yet, here it is again. The hymn exists. It waits. The sisters feel it in their bones, in their throats, in the cold corners of the stone hallways. It hums softly in their minds, unavoidable, persistent, unfinished. Even the bishop, who leaves the next morning, cannot shake it from memory. He reports later that the melody pressed against his mind long after he departed. He describes a sensation of being watched, of being asked a question with no answer.
The abbey seems smaller now. Shadows lengthen unnaturally. Corridors that should lead to rooms curve slightly, subtly, as if bending to contain the music. By evening, the sisters cannot stop humming. Quietly, in their cells, whispered notes at the altar, muted tones in the kitchen. Even in sleep, it persists. The candlelight flickers. Manuscripts sit untouched on the altar, and the hymn continues. It has survived fire, authority, fear. It moves through the stone, through the walls, through the sisters themselves, and in the quietest hours, the abbey holds its breath, waiting. Lightning splits the sky above the abbey. Rain lashes against the stone walls. The wind presses through the narrow windows, carrying the scent of wet earth and ozone. Shadows twist unnaturally across the corridors. Every step echoes, then disappears into the storm. The sisters huddle in their cells, habit soaked, candle flames trembling. They whisper prayers, careful not to disturb the fragile order of the night. But something wasn't right. It begins as a murmur, faint at first, a threading of sound beneath the howl of the storm. Notes, soft, insistent, impossible to place. One novice sits up, trembling. Her breath catches. She hears the melody again. The hymn. No one is singing, and yet it fills the abbey. The voices multiply, layer upon layer, weaving together. The The walls themselves seem to resonate, corridors vibrate, the stone hums, and that's when he heard it. A witness later describes standing outside the abbey, watching lightning split the sky. She swears the abbey sang, not one voice, but many, impossible harmonies, soaring and twisting, as if the building itself were vocalizing. Inside, the sisters clutch their hymnals, some kneel in prayer, some sit frozen on the cold stone floors. The melody climbs, folding over itself, notes unresolved, intervals stretched beyond comprehension. It presses on the ears, on the mind, it coils into the chest. One sister screams, her voice is swallowed almost immediately. She collapses to the floor, hands clutching at the stone. Others rush to her side, but the sound continues. A flash of lightning illuminates the choir room. Shadows flicker unnaturally. Manuscripts, already full of shifting notes, lie open on benches. Ink glistens wet. Lines move as if alive. Half the choir is missing by dawn. No one sees them leave. No footsteps echo in the corridors. The storm recedes, candle flickers and steadies, and yet the sense of absence lingers. Empty beds, vacant benches, silence too heavy to bear. The remaining sisters huddle together in the chapel. Their hands shake, their eyes dart toward every shadow. They speak little, whispered fragments only. One survivor later writes, "I heard it. I heard all of them, singing, and yet no one was there." The notes spiraled into the stone, into the walls, into us. By morning, they were gone. Half the choir was gone, and the hymn, it remained. The abbey itself feels altered. Corridors seem narrower, stone corners sharper. Candles flare and die without explanation. Doors open to empty halls. To no one dares approach the music room. Yet some claim to hear a single note drifting through the corridors at night. Constant, insistent, unresolved. The storm has passed. The rain trickles through the eaves. Birds circle outside, hesitant, but the melody lingers. It hums inside the walls, inside the cells, inside the minds of those who survived. Even Sister Agnes is altered. Her hands tremble over the piano keys. Her eyes dart to corners. She writes feverishly in her journal. Lines of music fold back, loops she does not remember composing. The remaining choir is fractured. Fear gnaws at them. Sleep is fitful. Every shadow seems alive, every sound a possible note. And still the hymn continues. It coils in their dreams. It hums beneath the wind. It lingers in the cold stone. By morning, the abbey is quiet, deceptively so. Half the choir gone. The storm departed, candles unlit, yet the melody waits. It waits in the walls, in the manuscripts left behind, in the silence, and the sisters whisper of it in trembling tones. It will not end. One says, it will not leave. Another adds, and in the emptiness, the abbey seems to pulse with the memory of voices that no longer exist. The hymn is unfinished, its voices are unfinished, and the abbey waits. The candlelight flickers along the walls of the abbey's inner chamber. Shadows stretch across polished stone. Dust drifts through the air, catching the faint illumination. The room feels smaller than it should, heavier. Even the echo of footsteps seems measured, restrained. The sisters gather, eyes lowered, their habits stiff, their breathing careful. The recent nights have left them pale, restless, haunted by echoes they cannot name. The abbess sits at the head of the chamber. Her hands rest on the final hymnal, bound in worn leather, but something wasn't right. She lifts her gaze. Pale eyes scan each sister, one by one. The weight of her presence is absolute. No one speaks. No one moves. Finally, her voice breaks the silence. "This hymn," she says softly, "was not written. It was heard." A hush falls. She traces a finger along the ink notes, worn by countless rehearsals, countless nights. Her hands tremble slightly, though she hides it well. It was revealed in prayer, in the depths where voices should not reach. It is the music of the abyss. The sisters shiver, some cross themselves, others clutch hymnals tightly. One novice whispers a prayer she cannot remember learning, and that's when he heard it. Even in the quiet chamber, the faintest echo of the hymn seems to hum from the walls, soft at first, a suggestion of intervals bending against each other, impossible harmonies, notes unresolved. It lingers just beyond comprehension, pressing lightly on the eardrums. The abbess continues, her voice calm, measured, though the weight of confession trembles beneath it. I do not know how it came to me. I do not know why it demanded transcription. It is not of man. It is not of the choir. It is something else, something older. She pauses, fingers hover over the manuscript. The candlelight trembles. The last copy must not be sung. It must not be shared. It must be sealed, locked away, forgotten. The sisters watch as she lifts the hymnal, moving carefully toward a reliquary in the corner. Its wood is dark, carved with intricate symbols. Iron bands bind it. A small key rests in her palm. She opens the reliquary. The air is heavy with the scent of old wood, candle wax, and faintly ironed ink. The hymnal slides inside. She closes the lid. The key turns. Locked, final. The sisters step back. Some hold their breath. The silence is absolute, and yet, the sense of the hymn remains. Lingering, insistent, unfinished. Outside the chamber, the abbey is quiet, but the memory of voices fills every corner. They float along the corridors, slip under doors, coil around the sleeping sisters. Even those who try to pray find the notes echoing in their heads. One sister later recalls, I could not stop hearing it. Even the locked reliquary did not hold it. It lived in the walls, in the shadows, in my own breath. I feared that if I exhaled, the hymn would escape from me. The abbess sits in quiet reflection. Her hands rest on her lap, eyes fixed on the reliquary. She does not speak further. She cannot. The final copy is sealed. Yes, but the music has taken root in ways no lock or candle can restrain. The abbey breathes differently. Corridors curve subtly. Candlelight flickers with a nervous pulse. Stone walls hum faintly. Even the youngest novices whisper the melody in their sleep. Unfinished cadences coil in dreams. Intervals bend in impossible ways. The abbess knows what must never be spoken, and yet, the hymn has already spoken. It lives, it waits, and the sisters sense it watching, patient, insistent, beyond the reliquary. Even silence is no refuge. By nightfall the abbey seems smaller, shadows press closer. The air is thick with the memory of a hymn that should never have been heard. And in the quietest moments, when the candles die, and the stone is cold beneath the feet, the faintest unresolved note drifts through the halls. The last hymn is written, and nothing will ever be the same. The valley lies quiet beneath a low gray sky. A thin mist clings to the hillsides. Trees sway without sound. The abbey perches atop its hill like a dark sentinel. Stone walls slick with rain and moss. Windows stare blankly, shuttered. Bricks seal doors. Iron gates lock the paths. Even the wind seems hesitant to cross the threshold. But something wasn't right. The Vatican has ordered the abbey closed. Every exit blocked. Every reliquary hidden deep within stone vaults. No human hand may enter. No candle flame flicker inside the cloistered halls. The villagers whisper in hushed tones. They should have left it alone. An old man says. His voice is thin, shaking. Music that should not be heard. It will not be silenced. Inside the abbey is empty. The corridors echo only the faint drip of water. Dust layers every surface. Manuscripts sit locked away, untouched, their ink dry but sharp. And yet, the memory of the hymn lingers. Some nights travelers claim faint voices drift across the valley. Echoes of harmonies that bend unnaturally, rising and falling like broken bells. Notes unresolved.
intervals stretching impossibly. And that's when he heard it. A shepherd walking the hillside pauses. The wind carries a whisper of melody. He hears layers of sound, voices that could not belong to a single human throat. A choir impossible to count, singing together, apart, over, under itself. He kneels, breath caught in the cold air. The sound curls through the valley, threading between the hills, coiling through the trees. He swears it calls to him, not with words, with questions, impossible questions. Even those who remain near the abbey cannot resist the effect. Some report waking at night, hearing the faint hum of notes threading through their windows. They close doors, they shutter blinds, but it persists. The stone walls, bricked and cold, seem to vibrate faintly with memory. Shadows shift subtly. Candlelight from outside flickers against the sealed windows, casting long shapes that bend as if listening. Pilgrims are forbidden to approach, yet some are drawn by curiosity. They claim to feel the stone hum beneath their fingers. Even a locked reliquary cannot contain the weight of the music it holds. The valley itself seems altered. Night animals grow restless. Winds change direction unpredictably. The echoes of the hymn twist across the hills, fading, returning, a coil that never unravels. And the villagers tell stories of the missing choir.
Half of them vanished after the storm. Some say they were claimed by the abbey itself. Others say the music took them, layer by layer, voice by voice, leaving only silence in their beds, inside the sealed abbey. No one confirms these tales. No one can. Yet the effect is real. The air hangs heavy, even miles away. Travelers walking beneath the hill hear the faintest whisper of notes. They pause, uncertain. Shivers travel up their spines. The abbey waits, locked, bricked, hidden. The reliquary buried beneath walls of iron and stone. And yet, music persists. Notes curl invisibly through the air. Intervals remain unresolved. Cadences hang suspended, questioning, refusing closure. A local villager recalls, "Some nights, I swear I hear them, voices drifting through the fog. A hymn I do not know, but remember, it bends around the hills, like it owns the valley. I cannot stop hearing it. No priest can enter, no scholar can study it. Even the Vatican reports that the abbey resists attention. It sits on the hill, silent yet alive, empty yet full. The candlelight outside flickers. Shadows stretch across the valley floor. Every echo, every hum, every impossibly layered voice drifts into the dark. And the hymn waits. It waits in the stone, in the locked reliquary, in the memory of those who survived. Even centuries later, those who walk near the hill report hearing a melody, unfinished, unresolved, bending like broken bells. The abbey has been sealed, but it has not been silenced, and the valley remembers. The mist clings to the valley at dusk. The hills roll silently beneath a gray sky. Trees sway without sound. The ruined abbey sits atop the hill. Stone walls bricked and weathered, windows shuttered, iron gates rusted. It seems abandoned, but something wasn't right. Scholarship reports speak quietly of the abbey. Archivists whisper in dimly lit rooms, cataloging fragments of manuscripts once thought lost, lines of music, never fully resolved, inked in shaky hands, preserved in secret corners of libraries and private collections. The reliquary itself is missing. Some claim it was moved, hidden. Others say it was destroyed. Yet fragments survive, carried in notebooks, tucked between yellowed folios, notes that bend the mind, cadences that pull at memory, rhythms that twist like coils inside the skull. And that's when he heard it. A musicologist, decades later, listening to a recovered fragment, reports feeling the same pull. The notes wrap around thought, impossible harmonies twist, unresolved intervals curling inward like fingers around the brain. He stops before completion. He knows the danger. To him was never meant to be finished. Voices from the past reach across time. Sisters long gone are remembered by the cadence of their songs, their missing voices echoing in the fragments. Scholars debate. Some say the melody itself is alive. Some say it is a warning. Others say it is punishment. The abbey, though sealed and abandoned, continues to claim attention. Visitors report fleeting harmonies, drifting down the hill, layered beyond comprehension, notes bending like broken bells. The stone remembers. The wind carries what remains. Archivists handling the fragments speak of nausea, sudden dizziness, the sense of a presence, patient and unyielding. Some refuse to work after sunset. Some fold the music away, only to find it resurfacing weeks later. Every attempt to finish it fails. Every attempt brings a shiver, a whisper of movement in the corner of the eye, a sense that the hymn is waiting, not for ears, but for something else entirely. A retired monk recalls a story from his youth. I heard the melody once in fragments. I tried to hum it, unaware. It curls around the mind, and I cannot stop. I do not sleep. I cannot think. I do not touch it again. The abbess's warning echoes through time. Do not finish it. Even centuries later, it remains. Fragments in libraries, shifting ink on fragile pages, the faintest echoes in the valleys. The melody is patient, waiting. A musicologist listening alone reports, I paused at the last note. The rest, I cannot. It is not for me. Outside, wind brushes over the hills. Shadows stretch across the bricked windows. The abbey waits, silent, cold, yet alive. The air seems heavier. The stone hums faintly underfoot. Villagers claim that on certain nights, the air vibrates with impossible intervals. A harmony of voices that could not belong to human throats. Notes unfinished, questions unresolved. The wind carries them across the valley. Even light bends around the stone. Candle flames flicker unnaturally. Footsteps echo where no one walks. Those who know its history warn others. Some speak in hushed tones to avoid the attention of the hymn itself. It exists in fragments, in whispers, in memory, in the spaces between notes. No one dares reconstruct it fully, and yet the temptation lingers. The final warning remains. Should you ever hear the hymn in full, do not finish it. Do not give it form. Do not allow closure, because the hymn is not simply music. It is question. It is pull. It is weight. It waits. The abbey, the reliquary, the fragments, all are silent witnesses, yet their presence is palpable. The melody coils in shadows, brushing along the mind's edges. It exists in quiet rooms, forgotten archives, candlelit studies. Archivists report anxiety. Scholars report unshakable unease. Musicians feel it in their bones. They stop before completing lines, because instinct tells them it is not theirs to finish. Even the wind that rustles the valley seems to carry the hymn's echo, layered, unfinished, persistent. The abbey itself waits patiently on the hill. Its stone walls hold the weight of voices that cannot rest, and the reliquary, wherever it lies, hides its final secret. The hymn is patient. The hymn is waiting. And if you ever hear it in full, you will know why it was never meant to be completed. Repeat second time. The mist clings to the valley at dusk. The hills roll silently beneath a gray sky. Trees sway without sound. The ruined abbey sits atop the hill. Stone walls bricked and weathered. Windows shuttered. Iron gates rusted. It seems abandoned, but something wasn't right. Scholarship reports speak quietly of the abbey. Archivists whisper in dimly lit rooms, cataloging fragments of manuscripts once thought lost, lines of music, never fully resolved, inked in shaky hands, preserved in secret corners of libraries and private collections. The reliquary itself is missing. Some claim it was moved, hidden. Others say it was destroyed. Yet fragments survive, carried in notebooks, tucked between yellowed folios. Notes that bend the mind, cadences that pull at memory, rhythms that twist like coils inside the skull. And that's when he heard it. A musicologist, decades later,
listening to a recovered fragment, reports feeling the same pull. The notes wrap around thought, impossible harmonies twist, unresolved intervals curling inward like fingers around the brain. He stops before completion. He knows the danger. The hymn was never meant to be finished. Voices from the past reach across time. Sisters long gone are remembered by the cadence of their songs, their missing voices echoing in the fragments. Scholars debate. Some say the melody itself is alive. Some say it is a warning. Others say it is punishment. The abbey, though sealed and abandoned, continues to claim attention. Visitors report fleeting harmonies drifting down the hill, layered beyond comprehension, notes bending like broken bells. The stone remembers. The wind carries what remains. Archivists handling the fragments speak of nausea, sudden dizziness, the sense of a presence, patient and unyielding. Some refuse to work after sunset. Some fold the music away, only to find it resurfacing weeks later. Every attempt to finish it fails. Every attempt brings a shiver, a whisper of movement in the corner of the eye, a sense that the hymn is waiting, not for years but for something else entirely. A retired monk recalls a story from his youth. I heard the melody once in fragments. I tried to hum it, unaware. It curls around the mind, and I cannot stop. I do not sleep. I cannot think. I do not touch it again. The abbey's warning echoes through time. Do not finish it. Even centuries later, it remains. Fragments in libraries, shifting ink on fragile pages, the faintest echoes in the valleys. The melody is patient, waiting. A musicologist listening alone reports, I paused at the last note. The rest, I cannot. It is not for me. Outside, wind brushes over the hills. Shadows stretch across the bricked windows. The abbey waits, silent, cold, yet alive. The air seems heavier. The stone hums faintly underfoot. Villagers claim that on certain nights the air vibrates with impossible intervals, a harmony of voices that could not belong to human throats. Notes unfinished, questions unresolved. The wind carries them across the valley. Even light bends around the stone. Candle flames flicker unnaturally. Footsteps echo where no one walks. Those who know its history warn others. Some speak in hushed tones to avoid the attention of the hymn itself. It exists in fragments, in whispers, in memory, in the spaces between notes. No one dares reconstruct it fully, and yet the temptation lingers. The final warning remains. Should you ever hear the hymn in full, do not finish it. Do not give it form. Do not allow closure, because the hymn is not simply music. It is question. It is pull. It is weight. It waits. The abbey, the reliquary, the fragments, all are silent witnesses, yet their presence is palpable. The melody coils in shadows, brushing along the mind's edges. It exists in quiet rooms, forgotten archives, candlelit studies. Archivists report anxiety. Scholars report unshakable unease. Musicians feel it in their bones. They stop before completing lines, because instinct tells them it is not theirs to finish. Even the wind that rustles the valley seems to carry the hymn's echo, layered, unfinished, persistent. The abbey itself waits patiently on the hill. Its stone walls hold the weight of voices that cannot rest, and the reliquary, wherever it lies, hides its final secret. The hymn is patient, the hymn is waiting, and if you ever hear it in full, you will know why it was never meant to be completed. Repeat third time. The mist clings to the valley at dusk. The hills roll silently beneath a gray sky. Trees sway without sound. The ruined abbey sits atop the hill. Stone walls bricked and weathered. Windows shuttered. Iron gates rusted. It seems abandoned, but something wasn't right. Scholarship reports speak quietly of the abbey. Archivists whisper in dimly lit rooms, cataloging fragments of manuscripts once thought lost, lines of music, never fully resolved, inked in shaky hands, preserved in secret corners of libraries and private collections. The reliquary itself is missing. Some claim it was moved, hidden, others say it was destroyed, yet fragments survive, carried in notebooks, tucked between yellowed folios, notes that bend the mind, cadences that pull at evil, sometimes hides not in blood, but in beauty that should not exist. Some songs are not meant to be sung,